Hello everyone, welcome. This is the second YouTube session of our 7th fall edition of the Read for Pixels campaign. My name is Anusha Kandasivam. I'm your moderator for this session. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 13 award-winning and best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. Now, I'll be telling you a bit more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser. We have lots and lots of exclusive author goodies a little later in the session. But meanwhile, you can find out about the Pixel Project by visiting our website, www.thepixelproject.net. Okay, so for today's session, we have a very special guest, Brigid Kemmerer, who is a New York Times bestselling author of dark and alluring young adult novels like A Curse So Dark and Lonely, More Than We Can Tell, Letters to the Lost, and paranormal YA stories like the Elemental series and Thicker Than Water. So Brigid is a full-time writer. She lives in the Baltimore area with a husband, her boys, her dog, and her cat. Here is Brigid.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We're so glad to have you. So before we go on to the reading and the Q&A session, I have to tell you about the awesome goodies that Brigid has donated to us that we're putting in the stash that we have as perks for donors on the Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. Okay, so goodie number 1 is Brigid Kemmerer's CURSEBREAKERS set. So there it is. Amazing. I love those covers. So you'll get one hardcover set of the CURSEBREAKERS trilogy, which will be signed and personalized for you, a selection of CURSEBREAKERS bookmarks as well, and a selection of CURSEBREAKERS stickers. So, and please note, this set includes a Barnes & Noble special editions of A Heart So Fierce and Broken and A Vow So Bold and Deadly. And these special editions include bonus chapters from additional characters' point of view. So it's just an awesome bundle, amazing. And it's also for donors worldwide. So wherever you are in the world, you can get them. The second bundle is the Defy the Night arc, which is also signed and personalized.
Oh, that one's already gone.
Yeah, it is already gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to say thank you to Ariella Noth, who got the Defy the Night arc. It's awesome. But let me just tell you what you all missed out and Ariel got is the first book in Brigid's brand new fantasy series about a kingdom divided by corruption, where the prince is desperately holding it together and the girl will risk everything to bring it crashing down. Sounds amazing. And so Brigid had one signed and personalized copy of the arc of Defy the Night, and which Ariella Noth got. Thank you so much, Ariella. But there's still one more goodie bundle left. Okay, Brigid Kemmerer's critique bundle. Here we go. The donor who donates to get this critique session will get one written critique of your query letter, one written critique of 1 to 2 chapters of your work in progress, depending on the chapter length. I think you said that the number of pages for your query letter and the segment from your work in progress must be no more than 35 pages combined. And make sure it's double-spaced. And so you get one written critique for query letter, one written critique of your work in progress, and one round of up to 3 follow-up questions sent in one email to Brigid after she has sent you your critique. So this is an amazing opportunity. It's a rare chance for anyone working on getting their first book published to get expert guidance from Brigid and some really honest and amazing expert feedback. Okay, so yeah. So we have those 2 bundles that are still available, and all donations, all funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. So please do give generously. We'll be sharing some links in the chat box later of how you can, and I'll explain how you can go and get your hands on them. But for now, I'm going to move on to the reading. Actually, before I do that, just remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, please do sign into YouTube so that you can ask your questions in the chat box. And our moderators, Xiaoxin and Denisha, will be there to relay the questions to me and Brigid, who will answer them. Okay, so now I'll hand it over to Brigid. Tell us what you're reading.
Sure. So I'm going to read a short snippet from A Curse So Dark and Lonely. Now, A Curse, for anybody who is not familiar with the series, this is a YA fantasy series. It's a crossover fantasy, so it does involve a girl from Washington, D.C., so a girl from our world who ends up getting transported to a fairy tale kingdom to help break a curse. It's a very loose Beauty and the Beast retelling, if you're familiar with the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. So I'm going to read a really short snippet from the part where Harper is first transported to the fairy tale kingdom. She starts out in Washington, D.C. And this is chapter 2 from Curse. Washington, D.C. is so cold it should be illegal. I pull up the hood of my sweatshirt, but the material is practically threadbare and it doesn't do much good. I hate being out here playing lookout, but my brother has the worst end of this job, so I try not to complain. Somewhere down the street, a man shouts and a car horn blares. I bite back a shiver and suck more tightly into the shadows. I found an old tire iron near the curb earlier, and I twist my fingers against the rusted metal, but whoever it was seems far away. A glance at the timer on Jake's phone tells me he has another 13 minutes. 13 minutes and he'll be done, and we can go buy a cup of coffee. We don't really have money to spend, but Jake always needs time to unwind, and he says the coffee helps. It ratchets me up so I can't sleep, which means I don't crash until 4 in the morning, and then I miss school. I've missed enough days of my senior year that it probably doesn't matter anymore. I sure don't have any friends who will miss me. So Jake and I will sit in the corner booth of an all-night diner, and his hands will tremble on the mug for a few minutes. Then he'll tell me what he had to do. It's never good. I had threatened to break his arm. I twisted it up behind his back. I think I almost dislocated it. His kids were there. It was awful. Or I had to punch him, told him I was going to hit him until a tooth came loose. He found the money real quick. I don't want to hear the way he shakes them down for cash. My brother is tall and built like a linebacker, but he's always been gentle and soft-spoken and kind. When Mom first got sick, when Dad got involved with Lawrence and his men, Jake would look out for me. He'd let me sleep in his room or sneak out of the house for ice cream. That was when Dad was around, when Dad was the one getting threatened by Lawrence's bill collectors, the men who'd come to our door to reclaim the money Dad had borrowed. Now Dad's gone, and Jake's playing bill collector just to keep them off our backs. Guilt twists my insides. If it were just me, I wouldn't let him do it. But it's not just me. It's Mom, too. Jake thinks he could do more for Lawrence, buy us more time, but that would mean actually doing the things he's only threatening to do. It would mean truly hurting people. It would break him. I can already see how even this is changing him. Sometimes I wish he'd drink his coffee in silence. I told him that once and he got mad. You think it's hard to listen? I have to do it. You're lucky, Harper. You're lucky you just have to hear about it. Yeah, I feel super lucky. I glance at the phone. 12 minutes. If his time runs out, it means the job went bad and I'm supposed to run, to get Mom out, to hide. We've gotten down to 3 minutes before, 2 minutes, but he always appears, breathing hard and sometimes speckled with blood. I'm not worried yet. Rust flakes under my fingertips as I twist the ice-cold tire iron in my hand. Sunrise isn't far off, but I'll probably be too frozen by then to even notice. A light feminine laugh carries in the air nearby, and I peek from the doorway. 2 people stand alone by the corner just at the edge of the circle of light cast by the street lamp. The girl's hair shines like a shampoo commercial, swinging as she staggers a little. The bar is all closed at 3 a.m., but she clearly didn't stop. Her miniskirt and open denim jacket make my sweatshirt feel like a parka. The man is more suitably dressed in dark clothes with a long coat. I'm trying to decide if this is a cop busting a hooker or a guy picking up a date when the guy turns his head. I duck back into the doorway. Her laughter rings through the street again. Either he's hilarious or this girl is hammered. Then the laugh cuts short with a gasp, like someone yanked a plug. I hold my breath. The silence is sudden and absolute. I can't risk looking. I can't risk not looking. Jake would be so pissed. I have one job here. I imagine him yelling, "Don't get involved, Harper. You're already vulnerable." I peek out around the edge of the doorway. The blonde has collapsed in the man's arms like a marionette, her head flopped to the side. His arm is hooked under her knees, and he keeps glancing up and down the street. Jake will lose his mind if I call the cops. It's not like what he's doing is legal. If the police come around, Jake is at risk. I'm at risk. Mom's at risk. But I keep staring at that waving blonde hair, at the limp arm dragging the ground. She could be dead or close. I can't do nothing. I slip out of my sneakers so my stupid left foot won't make a dragging noise against the pavement. I can move quickly when I want to, but quiet is tough to master. I rush forward and raise the bar. He turns at the last second, which probably saves his life. The bar comes down across his shoulders instead of his head. He grunts and stumbles forward, and the girl goes sprawling onto the pavement. I raise the bar to hit him again, but the man retaliates faster than I'm ready for. He blocks my swing and drives an elbow into my chest, hooking my ankle with his own. I'm falling before I realize it. My body slams into the concrete. He's suddenly right there, almost on top of me. I start swinging. I can't reach his head, but I catch him across the hip, then his ribs. He seizes my wrist and smacks my arm down to the pavement. I squeal and twist away from him, but it feels like he's kneeling on my right thigh. His free arm pins my chest. It hurts a lot. Release the weapon. He's got an accent, but I can't place it. And now that his face is on top of mine, I realize he's young, not much older than Jake. I clench my fingers even tighter around the bar. My breath makes huge panicked clouds between us. I beat at him with my free hand, but I might as well be striking a statue. He tightens his hold on my wrist until I genuinely think the bones are rubbing together. Release it, he says again, his tone thickening with anger. Jake, I scream, hoping enough time has passed that he might be heading back. The pavement stabs daggers of ice into my back. Every muscle hurts, but I keep fighting. A siren kicks up somewhere nearby, but it'll be too late. I try to claw at his face again, but I catch his neck again. Blood blossoms under my nails, and his eyes turn murderous. The sky lightens fractionally behind him, turning pink with streaks of orange. His free hand lifts, and I don't know if he's going to hit me or strangle me or break my neck, but it doesn't matter. This is it. My last sight will be a glorious sunrise. But I'm wrong. His hand never strikes. Instead, the sky disappears altogether.
Oh, that was so awesome.
Thanks.
so tension. And then what happens? Read the book.
Then she ends up in a fantasy kingdom.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so we just kind of, let's start with the Q&A. So we just saw, a really cool introduction to an amazing character. And your books feature plenty of fantastic female protagonists like Harper, we just saw, and Leah Mara from the CURSEBREAKERS series, Becca Chandler from the Elemental series, and so many more. They're all complex characters with agency, and they are human and they're flawed. So could you tell us what or who are your inspirations for your female characters?
Oh, wow. I mean, I feel like, I'm in my 40s now. I feel like I have had so many women in my life who have, just really shown me how to be brave and how to be strong and how to do it in a kind way. There's so many different ways for women to be strong. Probably most notably my mother. My mom is retired now, but she was a registered nurse for her whole life. And she is simultaneously one of the strongest and kindest people that you could ever imagine wanting to know. She is the kind of person who would just give you the shirt off her back, if she could. But then she is also just amazingly strong in standing up to people and standing up for what she believes in. So she's been a constant inspiration to me. As far as authors, I've always admired Jodi Picoult. She's an amazing writer, and she really tells stories from all sides, of the human experience. And I think that's truly amazing. And I've been lucky enough to become friends with Jodi over the last year or so. But she, I've been reading her books since I was a teenager, which just blows me away. Just so many teachers throughout school, just showing me just all the different ways that women can be powerful. It's been amazing.
That's pretty awesome. Which brings me to my next question very smoothly. So like all genres, fantasy has its share of female stereotypes and tropes. So to create a female character who breaks gender norms in fiction, some authors tend to fall back on this not like other girls trope, where, but however, your female characters are very well-rounded. They are aware that they can be strong and independent and intelligent and skillful, and they can be feminine and girly if they want to at the same time. So how do you break stereotypes to create a female character with agency while dealing with the world around her, including situations that involve sexism, misogyny, and violence against women and girls. And before I forget, I want to tag on this little question from the audience member, Rani Cho, who also says Harper having cerebral palsy, Leah Mara being curvy. These are all things that you don't see usually in, especially YA. So how do you make these decisions?
For me, I think some of it just comes from me personally. I spend a lot of time thinking about, people and how people have so much, especially women, have so much variety to the things that they like. For me personally, when I was growing up, I loved reading and I loved writing, but I also loved math and I loved science. And I loved riding horses. I loved being girly, but I also loved being strong. Over the last few years of my life, I've really gotten into weightlifting, which is traditionally a very male sport. But I love it. But I can love weightlifting, but I can also love getting a nice manicure. Well, once the pandemic is over,
Yes,
get a manicure, right? And so I love all of these different varied things, and there are so many different ways to be a woman or to be feminine, and I don't think people need to limit themselves as to what pop culture has talked about for so many years. And that's why I love creating characters like Harper, who does have cerebral palsy. I wanted, since I knew, and Harper is in A Curse So Dark and Lonely. And when I started creating Harper's character, I knew that I was going to have a prince who was cursed by magic. And I wanted to give Harper something, not a curse, but when she gets into Emberfall and she meets Prince Ren, and he's very angsty, and he's like, woe is me, I am cursed with this terrible thing. And she's like, you are a prince in a castle with an endlessly replenishing supply of food. Your life is not that bad. And I wanted to kind of juxtapose that with Harper's character, where I wanted her to be like, okay, I've got cerebral palsy. This is what it is. Whereas Ren is like, but you're injured, or you're incapacitated in this way. And she's like, no, I'm really not. Like, this is just who I am. And when it came to Leah Mara, who's a character who's introduced in A Heart So Fierce and Broken, it was important to me. I didn't want to write, this skinny, badass, sword-wielding kind of female character. There's nothing wrong with those kinds of characters. But since the love interest was Gray, who is already like this strong warrior guy with a sword, I wanted to give him somebody who would challenge him and challenge his opinions of the world. And that character kind of came to life in Leah Mara. So I really love stretching my characters as far as I can.
That's cool. Just a quick comment from someone in the audience, Katie Kershaw, who says, you're one of my favorite authors, but one thing I admire most about you is your inspiration and encouragement to be strong. I love watching your workouts and look forward to your workout updates.
Oh, that's so awesome. Thanks, Katie.
That's so cool. She does have a question as well. Let's just get to it quickly since we're talking about strong women.
Sure.
Thank you for being such strong, beautiful women. What is your best advice for women who do not feel like they are strong or beautiful enough?
Oh my goodness. I think, first off, every woman is beautiful. There is no beautiful enough. Like, what you are is enough, and as far as strong, what really drew me to picking up a barbell and doing weight training was that, I was never a super athletic kid. I did ride horses, but I was never, I could never go run a mile. I wasn't the kid who was going to go play soccer. I wasn't, into those kinds of things. And a friend kept saying, you need to do CrossFit. You need to lift weights. It'll change your life. And it truly did change my life. And I think what blew me away about it when I first picked up a barbell was that the barbell doesn't care what you look like. And no matter where you are starting, you can always get stronger. Like, you could go out and try to run a mile, and if you're not in any kind of shape, you're going to immediately kind of feel like a failure. But anybody can, start at the bottom with a barbell and really, in a matter of weeks, just see their strength increasing like on a numeric level. And it's really amazing.
Yeah, cool. That is good advice. Okay, so let's getting back to your female characters. Like you said, not everybody is amazing straight away. You're not perfect all the time. So your female characters are also generally flawed in some way, as all people are. But when writing female characters, do you ever feel pressured by gender and cultural stereotypes to make them likable or relatable? And have you ever got any feedback or flack from readers for not making a female character likable enough?
That's a really good question. So I'm 12 books into my career, so I definitely get a lot of feedback from readers and reviewers as far as what people think of my characters, which is always welcome. I love the reviewer space, and I love that people take the time to write reviews of my books. But I wouldn't say that it's pressure. I personally just write the characters the way that I want to. I want them to be likable to me, and I hope that they are, if not necessarily likable to my readers, that they are at least relatable to my readers.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We find that in talking to a lot of authors that readers tend to put a lot of pressure on female writers as well, and because of the female characters they write. It's a weird thing where you can have a male character who's a total jerk, but if a female character, just tells the guy like, no, I don't like you, they're like, oh my God, why is she being so mean? But I guess
it's funny that you say that, because in the Elemental series, I have a boy character named Gabriel who is very sarcastic to kind of like hide his inner pain. And people are always like, I love Gabriel. Like, he was an immediate fan favorite because he's, always sarcastic and always kind of being abrasive and very much a jock. And I had a girl character in the series named Quinn, who is exactly like Gabriel. Sarcastic to hide her inner pain, and everybody was like, I hate Quinn. Quinn's such a bee. I can't stand her. I don't want to read her chapters. And it really was very eye-opening for me very early in my career that, guys got a pass, but girls, were expected to be like, oh, I love the boy.
Yeah, but it's cool that you're breaking these stereotypes, and more people are doing it nowadays, which is,
yes.
I think that's what people want to see, because that reflects real life, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have another question from another audience member. Let me see. Lauren Alyssa. It's a question about your writing process, I suppose. What made you decide which path you ended the trilogy with?
Oh, wow. Okay, so for A Vow So Bold and Deadly, now, A Curse So Dark and Lonely is from the perspective of Harper and Wren. So Harper, my girl from DC, and Prince Wren. And A Heart So Fierce and Broken is from the point of view of Commander Gray, who was the commander of Wren's royal guard, who was trapped with him, and a girl named Leah Mara, who's the daughter of the queen of a neighboring queendom. And then A Vow So Bold and Deadly is all 4 characters. I knew that I wanted A Vow So Bold and Deadly to have all 4 characters. And I knew going into the 3rd book how I wanted it to end. I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to get there. Some of the fun with writing for me is in the discovery. But I knew where I wanted those characters to end up, and I knew what I wanted the end of their journey to be. And I wrote the majority of this book during the pandemic, and especially at the beginning of the pandemic when everything was initially locked down and there was just so much fear and uncertainty and grief over, everybody basically losing a year of their lives, because everything was being canceled. And I just poured all of that emotion into the book, and that's kind of a lot of that went into the story.
Yeah, cool. Okay. All right. So we're continuing the discussion about the female characters. So your female characters do go through very challenging experiences in their lives. They experience sexism, misogyny, violence against women that reflects what many girls and women encounter in their lives here in our world. So, for example, in your Elemental series, you do address the issue of sexual assault head-on through the experiences of Becca, one of the main protagonists. She's a survivor of sexual assault, and her story is a typical example of a boy assaulting a girl, then getting angry at rejection, and then spreading rumors, which leads her to experiencing bullying and slut-shaming in school. Now, why did you decide to tackle this theme in Storm? And can you tell us what do you want your young readers to take away from it with regards to relationships and consent?
You know, for Becca in her storyline in Storm, you know, it was really important to me that Becca come away, you know, kind of finish the story in an empowered way, because Becca really, you know, I think anytime you talk about anything surrounding sexual assault, you have a lot of complex emotions, you know, and I think the vast majority of women have experienced sexual assault in some way in their lifetime. And there really are complex emotions surrounding that, you know, whether just, you know, the shame or the guilt, like, did I contribute to this in some way? And Becca definitely feels a little bit of that. And I wanted her to end the story feeling empowered and feeling like she had made the right decisions, you know, about how to handle things and what to do. For both, you know, for herself and to be able to move forward. And, you know, when that book was published, I did hear from a few parents who were worried that sexual assault was too heavy a topic for a book that was primarily aimed at teenagers. And, you know, as a parent myself, I have to disagree. I think there's something really powerful about books and storytelling that makes frightening experiences very accessible. In a very safe way. You know, if you think about a movie or a TV show depicting a violent scene, once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know, if a kid walks into the room and sees, you know, violence or gore or carnage on the screen, once they've seen it, they can't unsee that. But when you're reading, it's really all in your imagination. So sometimes an adult can read something that's truly traumatic, and if they have lived through something similar, that can be very triggering and it can be very frightening, and you have all of those built up emotions around it. But for younger people especially, sometimes reading about these types of experiences and seeing somebody come through it, you know, in a hopeful way, in an empowering way, can really help build confidence in a really safe and accessible way. That was a really long answer to your question. I'm sorry.
No, it's a really good answer. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, let me follow up with something. So besides trauma, you have female characters who go through lots of hardships. Like we saw Harper just now, you mentioned has cerebral palsy, but she strives to make the most of her life. It's just something she was born with. And Leah Mara, she's basically the daughter of an evil queen, and she's striving to prove herself to a very skeptical society. Have you had any feedback on about the depiction of the particular experiences of sexism and misogyny, or just subconscious prejudices that and stereotyping faced by the women in your books?
So not a lot of direct feedback. You know, I've had a lot of people say that they're, you know, a very feminist fantasy, which is wonderful. You know, I love that because I do want all of my female characters to seem very empowered and to have the ability to kind of tackle anything that the world throws at them. I will say that my editor is amazing, and she and I really work very hard to make sure that the female characters are being shown in that kind of empowering light with their own agency. And I have to, you know, give hats off to my editor, because she just has such a keen eye for moments where characters can be built up and can, you know, more of that can be brought to the forefront of the story. And she really helped me develop, especially Leah Mara's character. I think Leah Mara was a little bit weaker when I wrote the very first draft, and she really helped me find her inner strength.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see, especially the evolution of all these characters, you know, who kind of realize who and what they can be as they go on. That's what I really like about your books. Okay, so we've been talking about women and girls. Let's talk about men.
Okay.
So your books have a really wide range of male characters as well, of course. So you have the misogynistic ones, and you also have those who respect women and girls. And like your female characters, your male characters also deal with everything from self-doubt, bullying, and loneliness, even depression and PTSD as part of their growth and self-discovery. Now, this journey to find oneself is a classic fantasy trope, but writing male characters that are vulnerable and ready to learn and change is not usual. Why did you decide to write male characters like this?
So, you know, as a mother of, you know, several boys, I spend a lot of time, probably too much time, thinking about, you know, how boys think and, you know, how boys will be seen by the world around them. What kind of world are my sons growing up to be a part of, and what kind of men do I want them to be? So when I write these male characters into stories, I definitely think that there are important differences between, men and women, and I don't want to take anything away from that. But at the same time, I think sometimes, especially in pop culture, so on TV, in movies, in songs, in books, you really see like the ultra masculine side of boys. But it's important to me to also show that it's okay for boys to be vulnerable, and it's okay for boys to be soft, and it's okay for boys to admit weakness and ask for help. And I think that is something that can be really subtle, but is really undervalued in our society. And, so I do have lots of instances where I let boys have their macho moments if it is right for the character, but I also try to show those quieter moments as well.
Yeah. Do you think that like what you're doing now is you're basically reframing stories of how you describe men away from this hostile, toxic stereotypes towards complexity and vulnerability like you do? Do you think that it's one of the ways science fiction fantasy writers can break away from toxic tropes and break away from toxic tropes that promote toxic masculinity and the dehumanization of women? Did you get my question?
Yes. No, I absolutely do. I think, fantasy, one of the greatest things with fantasy is that it gives us such a broad spectrum of things to explore and things to write and things to do, and I feel like, especially in fantasy, it's very easy for writers to fall on the trope of, oh, it's a woman, she's in danger, maybe she should be sexually assaulted, and that will show the depth of her danger. And I'm like, we are writers, we are creators. We can think of different ways to add nuance and show that somebody is in danger without, having it be in danger of that, showing different layers to all of our characters, both the male characters and the female characters, and not have to rely on that common trope of just going right for the violence against women.
And I suppose it's also used as a sort of way to push the male characters' story forward, like, yes. Oh, my friend has got sexually assaulted, I need to save her, and look at all my pain.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think that eventually this violent alpha male type character is going to phase out of science fiction and fantasy and cultures worldwide, or do you think these kind of stereotypes will stick around much longer than expected?
I think we can all be hopeful. We're already starting to see change just in the discussion overall, but I think they'll always be there to some extent.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of stories, right? The line between consent and coercion isn't always very clear in fantasy books, whether it's YA fantasy, urban fantasy, especially paranormal romance, I think. And certainly in some subgenres of fantasy, violence against women is still often used as a catalyst for male characters' development, like I just said. Do you think it's an issue that writers have started tackling more successfully in recent years? And do you have any suggestions for fantasy and YA authors who wish to include violence against women in their books?
I do. I definitely think that authors have started to tackle this more in recent years, and in some really amazing ways. The first one that comes to mind is An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. Is amazing, and really, there were a couple of places where I was like, oh, this is going to go down this road of, this typical violence, and then it didn't. I recommend that book all the time. I really love it. There's another series that I just started reading 2 weeks ago, The Remnant Chronicles by Mary Pearson, has an incredible female lead character who is in some really, really traumatic events. And this woman, like, there's, half of one book and she's, basically a prisoner and she's being traipsed across, the desert. And she uses her wits to kind of protect herself. And it's amazingly well written. So I definitely think that authors are tackling it. And I think it can be written well in different ways to kind of break free of the whole, slave girl kind of motif or, any of those kinds of tropes.
Yeah. In your opinion, how do you think authors can strike a balance in their storytelling between raising awareness about issues like violence against women while telling an engaging story without being pedantic or preachy?
I mean, that right there is really just going to come down to the writing. You know, you want to tell a story as creatively as possible and stay true to your characters. But that's really just going to come down, you know, as far as keeping away from being pedantic and preachy, is just making sure that your characters have agency, and not that the plot is taking over, but that the characters are kind of doing what they need to do to get to the end of the story. That's almost like a writing craft question. So it would really depend on the book.
Okay, so we've been talking about writing stories, right? But how do you think that reading stories that explore this theme, that women can be empowered persons in their own right and men should respect women, how do you think that will help people to stop violence against women?
Well, just I think the amazing thing with reading is just that you can envision yourself in all of these different roles, and especially in YA literature, generally young adult novels, and with an element of hope. So if you can put yourself into the main character's shoes, you know, and you go through this journey with them, you know, this emotional journey with them, you know, you can really see different ways to navigate problems. You can see different ways to, you know, solve your challenges. And this is for both boys and for girls. You know, you can read about different characters doing different things and kind of come out of the experience a little bit changed.
Do you think it's so there are two schools of thought, right, when it comes to writing violence against women or gender inequality in stories. So some people, especially in the fantasy genre, some people think that it's better to depict an ideal world where everything is equal and everyone has the opportunity to be whoever they want to be. And some people think we should reflect the real world and depict inequality, misogyny, sexism, and violence. What is your opinion? Which do you think is better?
So I think that both can work depending on the story, and I feel like that's a cheating kind of answer. But I also feel like if, you know, when you write fantasy, you really have to lean into your world building. So if you've got a world that does have misogyny or anger towards women or violence or any of the things that we're discussing tonight, you know, if you have that kind of world, I do feel like there needs to be a backbone to explain why, right? You know, what your society kind of needs to reflect that. And if you, on the same token, if you have a world that doesn't have any of those things, I think that it's important to show that it's not like some kind of utopian society. You know, when I was writing in A Heart So Fierce and Broken, you know, where Leah Mara comes from is a matriarchy. They're ruled by a queen. And it was really important to me that I wasn't like, okay, we're just going to flip the patriarchy and we're just going to be like down with men in this society. I didn't want to show it in that light. I wanted to show that women can be in power, and that, you know, if, you know, one gender, you know, has the majority, that it, or is the stronger gender, you know, as perceived by the society, that it doesn't have to mean that the other gender is lesser, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so now many authors, especially SFF authors, still do have trouble writing stories that pass the Bechdel test. Now, for everyone out there, the Bechdel test is the test where women characters in a book or in a story talk about something other than men. So now, of course, we all know there are many more things that women talk about other than men. What can you suggest for writers who want to write female conversations and relationships realistically?
You know, I would say to make sure that you have plot points that don't just focus on a romance. That would be probably my number one rule, you know. And for me, I always try to make sure that my characters have like wants and dreams and fears that have nothing to do with the plot. You know, Liamara just, wanted to be queen, but she's not going to be queen. So now she just kind of wants to see if she can figure out a way to help find peace for her people. But then there are a lot of other things that she wants, and a lot of other things that she's afraid of that have really nothing to do with that primary goal. And I think that helps build multifaceted characters better than just trying to layer in a bunch of side plots. Just give your characters things that have nothing to do with the romance and nothing to do with the main plot, and they will have plenty to talk about, just like us.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually very good and easy advice to follow, I think. Okay, so let's talk about geek culture. So geek culture in general, including science fiction and fantasy, has had its share of critics saying that it's still too male-dominated, despite there are a rising number of prominent, well-respected, well-known female authors. But there's still plenty of hate, plenty of hostile, misogynist, and sexist behavior by male geeks towards female geeks. What do you think needs to be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's comics or gaming or books or even cons, more welcoming for women and girls?
So, I'm going to say that one of the most powerful things that can happen is when men stand up against it. I hate that we're still in a time where hearing from another man that you need to respect a woman is more powerful than hearing it from a woman. But it is, it is. And, and my husband and I have had this talk a lot, where, if he sees something online, not that my husband has ever engaged in any kind of like trolling or anything like that, but just, if he sees something online where people are, making fun of a woman or criticizing a woman, I'm always like, honey, you should be the one to say something, not me typing a comment, but you should type a comment, because I think that will have a greater impact. So that, I would say, is the number one thing. I do think that women need to just continue standing up for themselves, claiming that space, whether it's with video gaming, whether it's with writing, whether it's with comics, any of these spaces that are considered traditionally male. I can even talk, weightlifting. I can't tell you how many times I hear guys say, you don't want to get too bulky. Like, I'm not lifting weights because I care if a guy thinks I'm bulky. Like, that's just silly, I think that women just need to continue to feel comfortable to put themselves in these spaces and make themselves visible in these spaces. And I think it's important for, men to support us being there.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I see an interesting question from one of the audience members again, Katie Kershaw. So going back to what we were talking about characters just now, but it's a pretty interesting question. As an author, how do you define weakness? I truly believe what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So what is a weak characteristic?
Ooh, a weak characteristic. I feel like we can this is a hard one on the spot. I feel like we can turn, any kind of weak characteristic into a strength. I do generally think if characters aren't willing to talk about things, that can start to become a huge weakness. And, some of my characters definitely suffer through that, where they don't want to have a conversation. More weak characteristics. I don't know, because I don't, anything that society traditionally thinks of as weak, I don't think of it as weakness. This is
I suppose something which people would think is weak is something that if you can identify it in yourself, you can always work on it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like if somebody feels, like they're lacking in confidence, that's something that they can build on. If somebody feels like they're not strong enough, that's also something that they can work to improve.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Really a weakness is just something that you can make better.
Yeah. I guess this just shows how complex your characters are, because, things that people can, I guess there are tropes where you think that, oh, this character is weak because they lack self-confidence or they're mean to everybody. I don't know. But, eventually, I think, especially your characters kind of work through it all in the end, I feel. I don't know. Anyway.
I try to make them.
Yeah. Well, here's a fun comment from Katie. She's fangirling hardcore.
Oh.
There's quite a Oh, because this is what she said. Could you imagine Brigid Sama and Brigid Mary book? Oh my God, I need her to write one of them.
They're amazing authors. Like I am blown away. Like I started reading the Mary Pearson. I'm like halfway through the third book, and I just started reading this series like 10 days ago. I can't put it down. It's so good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So back to the questions. So you mentioned that you're a mom, right? So
Yes.
Parents are usually the most influential role models in a person's life. As a mother, what do you think parents can do to help prevent violence against women and girls in future generations and get boys involved in helping to do so? And I want to tack on a question from one of the audience members here. Oh, it's Katie again. Katie asked really amazing questions. Do you think it's harder raising all boys to be respectable men, not afraid to show emotion, or raising all girls that are usually targets of assault and shaming?
So I don't have any daughters, so I don't know. I can't speak to that authentically. And I think both sides are equally challenging. But I will say I had a moment the other day, and this is more in response to Katie's question. I had a moment the other day where I have two mom friends that I lift weights with. And, we were talking and I was saying how my one son was really struggling, with how he didn't want to get, like he was having great anxiety where he didn't want to get things wrong. He was scared to raise his hand at school because, he didn't want to give the wrong answer. And he was just having so much stress about taking tests because he didn't want to get a bad score, like just so much stress. And we were just talking about this. And I was talking about how I was trying to build him up and build his confidence and all those kinds of things. So we're lifting weights and I was doing bench press. So I'm laying on a bench. It was very heavy and I was like pushing it above my head. And as I'm lifting, and again, weight's super heavy. And as I'm lifting, he comes in to ask me a question. And he's like, I'm sorry, mommy, I didn't know you were lifting. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Just ask me. So he did. And he left. And as soon as he left, I said to my friends, I was like, I'm so glad he walked in at that moment because that weight was so heavy and I didn't want him to see me fail. And as soon as I said it, I had this epiphany where I was like, I just realized that I was not letting my sons see me fail. And I think it's really important for kids, both genders, to see that it is okay to fail and to do it gracefully. And I had this big moment where I was like, maybe, does he need to see that it is okay to fail? Do I need to do more than just say, it's okay, we support you, do your best? Does he need to see me fail? And I think that is really the key thing with kids overall, is that they do need to see us being the best part of ourselves, but they also need to see us, make ourselves better from the worst parts of ourselves. Kids need to learn how to apologize. Kids need to learn how to respect boundaries. And that means we have to respect their boundaries. It means we need to apologize to them. Kids need to learn kindness, which means they need to see us being kind to others. These are all of the things that are what's going to help raise children to either be the type of men who are going to help support women and help lift up women and help support other men in lifting up women. And this is the way to help teach girls to be strong and powerful themselves. That was a really long answer again. I'm sorry.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Okay. Yeah, I was saying it's a great answer. It's not long at all. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Let's see. We have more questions from the audience. This is amazing. Okay, so here's the question from Misty306. Hi, Misty. She asked, do you believe that historical fantasy and fairy tale tellings or fractured fairy tales are what is bringing more readers to fantasy literature?
I think there are so many ways to get into fantasy. And there's so many people writing fantasy. I do think that fairy tale retellings is a good gateway. It's a good, intro. If you're like, I don't know if I like fantasy, it's a good way in because you kind of know the underlying story. Sometimes people are a little wary of fantasy because they say, they're too long, or I don't want to read some big epic Game of Thrones book. But I can read Beauty and the Beast. I can read The Little Mermaid. So I do think it's bringing more readers to fantasy, and it's awesome.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good gateway, gateway drug. Yeah, I saw this cool comment from someone. Let me see if I can put it up. Okay, Rani Charles says the representation in your books is so amazing. I want to thank you. Yeah, it is pretty cool. We don't often. It's quite difficult to see like such big representation in books, but it's getting better. I would say.
I think so, for sure.
Yeah, and one of our producers had a message to me. She didn't put it up. She says, "I love Brigid's answers, very practical ideas and suggestions, and how you tell your husband to stand up for women is awesome."
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that could be advice for everyone as well. You need to tell the men in our lives that they should also stand up for women. Okay. You know what? We've been talking for almost an hour, so I'm going to ask my final question. It's a two-part question. Okay, and it's maybe a bit obvious, but we ask everyone this. So you have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. Can you tell us, why do you support the cause to end violence against women, and what do you think authors such as yourself can do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
So, I mean, I absolutely support ending violence against women, just because I don't think that there's any need for it. You know, I feel like violence against women is, you know, completely uncalled for. And I do think everyone worldwide should work towards eradicating it. You know, and from writers, I think that we can create characters that show women overcoming insurmountable odds. I think that we can show male characters both supporting women and also, you know, allowing themselves to show moments of vulnerability, allow them to show themselves making poor choices and then learning from them, just like our female characters do. You know, and I also think that writers can uplift other writers, especially writers of color, women of color, writers who are writing from marginalized identities. You know, all of these things will help bring more awareness, you know, not to just to violence against women, but just any kind of inequalities worldwide.
Yeah, cool. That's a cool answer. Okay, so here we are. We're at the end of the Q&A session. I just want to thank you, Brigid. Thank you so much for your very insightful answers.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for asking questions. And I think if I'm not mistaken, all the people who are asking questions today are women. So
yay!
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, now I'll put myself back on screen just for a little while. Hi, everyone. Hi, Brigid. So, because I want to tell you again about the awesome goodies that Brigid has donated to us. So there were 3 bundles. One has been taken already. The Defy the Night arc has been snapped up by Ariel Noss. But I'll tell you about the other 2 that are still available that you can get your hands on. Okay, so the first one is Brigid Kemmerer's CURSEBREAKERS goodie bundle. This one is for US donors only, I think. Yeah, so there they are. These awesome books that we've been talking about this whole time. One hardcover set of the CURSEBREAKERS trilogy, signed and personalized for you. And then a selection of CURSEBREAKERS bookmarks and a selection of CURSEBREAKERS stickers. So this set includes the Barnes & Noble special editions of A Heart So Fierce and Broken and A Vow So Bold and Deadly, which have bonus chapters from an additional character's point of view. So awesome stuff, very special. And then the other one that's available is the Brigid Kemmerer Critique Bundle. So you'll get 1 written critique of your query letter, 1 written critique of 1 to 2 chapters of your work in progress, depending on your chapter length. The total number of pages for your query letter and segment from your work in progress must be no more than 35 pages combined, double-spaced. And 1 round of up to 3 follow-up questions sent in 1 email to Brigid after she has sent you her critique. So now this is also a very special opportunity. It's a rare chance for anyone working on their first book to get expert guidance from Brigid and on your query letter on your work in progress. Okay, so Brigid is offering these exclusive goodies in support of keeping our work alive, so please do give generously. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. Now, besides Brigid's awesome stuff, We have plenty more author goodies available this week from authors and or publishers, including Alaya Johnson, Kieran Millwood Hargrave, Anna Stevens, Sarah Rash, and Sourcebooks. And the treats will be released every Thursday throughout March 2021. And the fundraiser ends in April 2021. So go and check it out before they're all gone. Okay, let me see. Let me share a little slide where I have some links for you. Here we go. Yep. So these are the links. You can donate to get these goodies. The Aurelia page, R4P Aurelia, IWD 2021. Yes, we are sharing the links on the chat box as well. So you just click on that and there you are. If you want to learn more about the Read for Pixels campaign, all the other authors that we have coming up who will be as awesome as Brigid, we have a link there as well. So go check out the schedule. And if you want to find out more about Pixel Project or violence against women, what you can do to help stop it, please go visit the Pixel Project's website at thepixelproject.net. And that's it. So that's it from us. So we want to say thank you again, once again, to Brigid. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was so much fun for us as well. And thank you to all the audience members who came and watched and asked all the amazing questions. And we will say goodbye to you for now. Bye.